In 1912, a mid-sized Cunard ship crosses the Atlantic. The Carpathia, dark hull, a single smoking funnel, a quiet, routine voyage. Suddenly, the wireless operator picks up an SOS from the largest ocean liner in the world. The Titanic is in danger. On the bridge, Captain Rostron decides to turn this ordinary ship into a rescue vessel, pushing engines, crew, and structure to the edge. Before we move through the 90 minutes that decided who would live and who would not return from the Atlantic, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and follow every decision made aboard the Carpathia. Shortly after midnight, Operator Cottam confirms the SOS is truly from the Titanic and carefully writes down the coordinates. The message reaches the bridge fast, where Captain Rostron orders a course change and full speed toward the disaster position. He commands steam to be diverted from the heaters to the engines, accepting that the Carpathia's interior will grow colder. In the engine room, engineers raise boiler pressure to squeeze out every extra knot. Officers move through corridors, waking the crew and signaling with urgency that the ship will be prepared to receive survivors. Across the lounges and decks, the Carpathia begins to shift from a modest liner into an improvised shelter at sea. With the new course set, Captain Rostron mentally calculates the distance to the Titanic's coordinates and estimates how long the Carpathia will need at top speed. Officers recall recent reports of ice in that region and reinforce the need for extra lookouts on the bow and in the rigging. Rostron orders searchlights readied, binoculars distributed, and observation posts reinforced, even knowing visibility is limited. The medical team is alerted to set up rapid response stations, expecting hypothermia and exhaustion. Inside the ship, stewards begin gathering blankets and clothing from passengers willing to help. Minute by minute, the Carpathia pulls farther from her original route and closer to a danger zone, assuming the role of a rescue ship amid the ice. As the Carpathia gains speed, the hull's vibration increases and can be felt across nearly every compartment. In the engine room, shifts are shortened so the firemen can keep feeding the boilers without immediate collapse. On the bridge, officers track speed, heading, and distance, adjusting the route whenever signs of ice appear ahead. Rostron orders nets, winches, and hoisting points prepared along the rails, anticipating contact with lifeboats. Inside the public rooms, crew remove chairs and decorative items, opening space for survivor movement and rest. A ship once built for moderate comfort is reorganized into a functional structure, ready to receive victims of a large-scale disaster. As the Carpathia presses on, lookouts begin spotting small chunks of ice scattered ahead of the bow. Reports of ice in the area are confirmed, and the bridge receives constant updates on the fragments' positions. Rostron chooses to keep speed high, but orders careful maneuvers whenever a larger mass appears ahead. The helm answers with firm movements, and the ship sways slightly, making passengers feel the change in course. With each successful deviation, it becomes clear the Carpathia is crossing a risk zone to reach the wreck site faster. Entering a heavier ice field, the Carpathia holds a speed above what's normal for a ship of her size. Lookouts continuously report new fragments ahead, and the bridge adjusts, heading in small angles to avoid direct impact. At the wireless, Cottam sends messages confirming the Carpathia is on the way and estimating arrival at the disaster site. Inside, lounges and corridors keep being rearranged to handle a large flow of people in a short time. crew remove rugs and loose objects from the floors to prevent accidents once survivors begin coming aboard. With each step completed, the ship becomes less a place of travel and more an emergency response platform at sea. As the night deepens, the Titanic's signals start to weaken on the Carpathia's receiver. Cottam retunes the set several times, realizing the distress messages are growing irregular and spaced farther apart. At a certain moment, the wireless falls completely silent, with no reply from the ship in danger. The operator confirms the equipment has not failed and informs the bridge about the sudden break in signals. Rostron understands this could mean power loss on the Titanic or the end of any possible transmissions aboard her. Even so, the Carpathia holds course and speed, now heading into a situation whose exact state no one can confirm. With the wireless silent, the Carpathia depends only on the coordinates already received and on navigational calculations. On the bridge, officers reassess distance and timing, adjusting the course to arrive as close as possible to the Titanic's estimated position. The crew is told that by dawn the ship will likely be at the center of a field of debris and lifeboats. Doctors, stewards, and sailors rehearse their duties in their minds, bracing for a rapid flow of people on board. Outside, ice continues to appear in isolated plates, reinforcing that the danger for the Titanic was real and immediate. The Carpathia moves on as the only lit point in a black sea, toward a place that no longer answers her calls. As the early hours pass, calculations show the Carpathia closing fast on the Titanic's coordinates. Surface ice grows more frequent, confirming the ship is entering the same danger zone reported hours earlier. On the bridge, focus tightens, and every small reflection on the water is watched as a possible boat or piece of wreckage. On deck, sailors adjust signal lanterns and recheck ropes and ladders, ready for first visual contact with survivors. The lounges prepared for the rescued remain empty for now, waiting for the first people to emerge from the dark. The Carpathia pushes ahead, her single funnel releasing steady smoke, closing on the point where the Titanic vanished. Navigation calculations indicate the Carpathia is very near the coordinates from which the Titanic sent her last SOS. Outside, ice thickens in patches, forming small white fields around the ship. On the bridge, the order is maximum visual attention, searching for any faint light that might indicate a drifting lifeboat. The deck crew remains in position, with ropes, nets, and blankets ready for immediate use. Inside, the ship is quiet, with prepared spaces waiting for the first survivors to step out of darkness. At this point, everyone aboard understands that at any moment the Carpathia may make contact with the first physical evidence of the disaster. The Carpathia is now sailing almost directly over the point where the Titanic reported her last position. Outside, the ice is more visible, and the feeling on board is that the ship is entering the immediate aftermath of the disaster. The crew knows that at any moment, pale shapes on the water may stop being just ice and become wreckage or lifeboats. On the bridge and across the decks, no one looks away from the horizon, searching for any sign of life in the dark. From here on, every visual detail will help rebuild what happened in this stretch of the Atlantic. If you want to follow this approach with precision, watching step by step what the Carpathia finds, consider subscribing and staying with this kind of documentary to the end, because the next sequence shows the first contact with the real scene of the sinking. Now, inside the estimated wreck area, the Carpathia slightly reduces speed to improve sea observation. The bow searchlight becomes the primary tool, sweeping different sectors ahead of the ship. Lookouts are instructed to search not only for ice, but for any irregular shape that could indicate debris or small boats. On deck, the crew keeps ropes and nets ready, knowing the first visual contact could happen at any second. The prepared interior spaces remain empty, but expectation is that will change within minutes. The feeling aboard is that the Carpathia is crossing an invisible line between open ocean and the disaster's core zone. Near the center of the presumed wreck site, the sea around the Carpathia shows more ice and small dark objects scattered between the waves. The searchlight begins to reveal shapes that don't look like ice alone, suggesting loose pieces riding the surface. On the bridge, officers instruct lookouts to report any long or clustered form that might indicate a lifeboat. On deck, the crew leans closer to the rails, trying to separate ice from what could be wood or other materials. Part of the tension aboard turns into certainty that the ship is crossing the exact zone where the Titanic disappeared. From this point, any new glint in the beam could be the first concrete sign of survivors or debris. After minutes of intense searching, one lookout notices a very faint point of light in the darkness. The glow is unstable, like a lantern swaying over the water, different from the steady reflection of ice. The bridge receives the call and focuses the searchlight in that direction, revealing an elongated shape that resembles a boat. The Carpathia adjusts course and speed to approach safely, avoiding waves that could destabilize the small craft. On deck, sailors position themselves with ropes, nets, and blankets, preparing for the first direct contact with survivors. From this moment on, the ship stops looking only for signs of the disaster and begins closing in on the first group of people saved that night. The first lifeboat identified by the Carpathia draws slowly alongside the hull, lit by both its own lantern and the ship's searchlight. From the deck, sailors throw lines and position hoisting nets, measuring distance carefully to avoid striking the occupants. The figures inside the boat appear still or barely moving, clear signs of exhaustion and extreme cold. The ship reduces speed further and holds a steady heading, creating a relatively calm pocket by the hull for the operation. Crew and the medical team wait near the upper deck and access doors, ready to receive people in shock and hypothermia as soon as they come aboard. This first contact sets the rescue pattern that will be repeated with other boats over the following hours. With the boat secured to the Carpathia's side, sailors begin bringing up the first survivors using rope ladders and nets. Some manage to rise under their own strength, while others must be practically hoisted, bodies stiff from the cold. On deck, medical staff and stewards stand ready with blankets, hot drinks, and improvised stretchers for the most severe cases. The survivors who reached the deck show clear signs of hypothermia, slow movement, fixed stares, delayed responses. The crew works to move them quickly inside, keeping the flow from the lifeboat as continuous as possible. This first group establishes the rhythm of an operation that must repeat again and again through the night. With the first boat already unloading, the Carpathia identifies other dark points around her, suggesting more craft scattered across the area. The crew must balance immediate rescue with locating the next boats. As new survivors climb the rope ladders, officers on the bridge mark the approximate position of each sighting to organize the approach sequence. On deck, the flow of people grows, a mix of unsteady steps, blankets being handed out, and stretchers moving through tight lanes. Interior corridors begin receiving successive groups of rescued passengers, guided into lounges prepared for rest and basic medical care. The Carpathia shifts from a single rescue contact into a continuous operation where every minute means more lives brought aboard. With the first survivors settled inside the Carpathia, the crew refocuses on the second lifeboat in view. The ship makes small adjustments of heading and power to approach without endangering the fragile craft. The searchlight alternates between the more distant boat and the water near the hull, ensuring nothing on the surface goes unnoticed. On deck, the team repeats the tested procedure. Lines ready, hoisting nets adjusted, rope ladders prepared to lower. Inside the ship, the lounges begin to fill, but organized space remains for more groups to come aboard through the night. The second lifeboat reaches the Carpathia's side under conditions similar to the first, but with even clearer signs of fatigue among its occupants. The crew, now more practiced, repeats the line and net deployment in quick, coordinated movements. Some survivors raise their arms with difficulty, asking for help, while others remain hunched and barely responsive. On deck, the area grows more crowded with people wrapped in blankets, forming clusters near the entrances to the interior. Inside, lounges receive a steady stream of new arrivals, mixing the newly rescued with those already warmed and resting longer. The Carpathia gradually transforms into a large emergency refuge, each boat bringing new stories and new demands of care. With the second boat's embarkation underway, the pattern becomes clear. Small groups scattered across different craft, all in severe exhaustion. The crew maintains a continuous cycle: approach, secure the boat, haul survivors up, guide them inside, move to the next sighting. On deck, the space is now shared by crew in constant motion and survivors sitting or standing, waiting for direction. Inside the lounges, the scale of the rescue emerges, with people from different social classes now sharing the same emergency rest areas. On the bridge, officers track progress closely, calculating how long they can remain in the area before turning for New York. As more boats are reached, the pace becomes more mechanical, but no less intense. The crew knows the sequence: slow approach, visual confirmation, lines over, difficult climb, transfer inside. On deck, numbers rise by the minute, and areas near the entrances become passage lanes, not places to linger. Inside, lounges and corridors show a mix of physical exhaustion and silence, with few reactions beyond what's needed to eat and warm up. On the bridge, officers mentally total how many people have come aboard, checking those numbers against the lifeboat capacity estimates. The Carpathia keeps low speed, still making small maneuvers to reach the last points of light and shadow in the dark sea. After many rescue cycles, only a few boats remain on the horizon. The Carpathia continues at low speed, completing a final sweep across the debris field. On the bridge, officers track the last sightings, aware that time and water temperature have narrowed any chance of finding more survivors. On deck, the crew follows the same procedure, now with visible physical fatigue in their movements. Interior spaces are nearly full, with new groups joining those already warmed and lying down longer. Gradually, focus shifts from active searching to organizing everyone aboard for the crossing to New York. After hours of continuous operation, the last boats begin to approach the Carpathia. The horizon is still dark, but faint hints of light suggest dawn is close. The crew repeats the known procedure with less margin for error, but with clear physical strain. Officers on the bridge already consider ending the search once every identified boat has been attended. On deck, movement is more controlled. Less rushing, but still a steady flow of people climbing up and being guided inside. The ship gradually stops functioning as an active search unit and fully assumes the role of transporting survivors toward shore. With daylight now over the Atlantic, the ice field around the Carpathia is revealed in full. From the bridge, the extent of the debris and the positions of the last boats already reached become clear. Officers conclude that after repeated passes, there is little chance of finding new survivors on the surface. Rescue operations shift from active searching to final confirmation that all visible boats have been reached. On deck, some survivors begin to step outside, silently watching the ice and emptiness where the Titanic sank hours earlier. The next step is to leave the debris area and set the definitive course for New York with everyone the Carpathia managed to bring aboard. With every identified lifeboat attended, the Carpathia officially ends active search operations. On the bridge, officers set the new heading, leave the ice zone and proceed toward New York at a speed suited to sea conditions. The wireless operator resumes transmissions, now reporting the approximate number of survivors aboard and the chosen destination. On deck, rescue gear begins to be stowed, while survivors and crew share the same space of exhaustion and quiet relief. Inside, the focus becomes keeping people warm, fed, and distributed as orderly as possible during the voyage. The Carpathia transitions from immediate relief ship to return transport, carrying hundreds of stories that outlived the sinking. As she nears the coast, the Carpathia carries a unique human record of the Titanic disaster. On the decks, exhausted faces turn toward the horizon, awaiting arrival at a port where families, authorities, and the press will be waiting. The ship, originally a modest liner on a regular route, becomes the vessel responsible for delivering survivors and the first consolidated accounts of the tragedy to land. Each person aboard carries a piece of the story, preserved in memories, improvised documents, and lists compiled by the crew. When the Carpathia enters coastal waters, her single funnel and dark hull come to symbolize the passage from disaster at sea to the possibility of life continuing on shore.